what I see, just a comment on that, as far as supply and demand is concerned. I believe that global mining production has been in a irreversible decline for the last 5 to 10 years.
Howdy folks, and welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and today is Sunday, November the 27th, 2016. And I have the very distinct honor and great pleasure of welcoming to the show for the first time Mr. Murray R. Nye, and he serves as the chairman and CEO of Winston Gold Mining Corporation, which is traded on the Canadian Securities Exchange under the symbol WGC, and in the U.S. on the OTC QB market under the symbol WGMCF. Mr. Nye, welcome to the Daily Coin.
Pleasure to be with you today, Roy. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm certainly glad that you're able to take some time out, and I wanted to start with the election that's just passed, and with it now in the rearview mirror, I mean, do you see President-elect Trump as having any impact on the gold and silver markets? And if so, what type of impact, and why would you think that?
Well, it looked like he was going to have an impact overnight when you were watching the election. It looked like, at least in the polls, it looked like he was going to win. The price of gold shot up $60 or $70, and the Dow futures came off 700 or 800 points. And it looked like that was going to have a very positive impact, at least on the short term. But by morning, everything kind of turned probably close to even, and then we've seen a steady kind of slide to this level that we're at right now, which is in the 12.10 range, 12.12 range for the price of gold. I think you have to kind of take a wait and see attitude towards it. I think he's going to be good on the regulation side. I think he's going to be probably more pro-mining as far as letting mining companies in your country operate. Certainly within the parameters of what you need to do responsibly as far as the environment is concerned and every other aspect of that area. But I think he might get the regulations to the point where it's going to give a green light so people would tackle some projects in the U.S.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly, and he just President-elect Trump just released a statement to the American people. It was either yesterday or the day before. It's been the last 48 hours that in the first 100 days, that if he's going to introduce legislation that states that if somebody wants to introduce new regulations, for every one regulation that's brought to the table, 2 regulations have to come off the books. So I would agree wholeheartedly that he should be pretty good for the regulations of the mining companies.
Yeah, and I think what that'll do, Rory, that'll increase investment in the U.S. I think that'll create jobs in the short term and long term, and I think it's going to be very productive for the U.S.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. We need less regulation, and we certainly in some areas, and we need more regulation in other areas like banking. But that's a story for another day.
It certainly is.
Demand for physical gold and silver has been running near record highs, and is certainly at very, very elevated levels, as I'm sure you're aware. And how will the mining industry be able to ramp up to meet future demand levels? And just before we started recording, Murray, you had said that you'd made the comment that the mining industry has been either down or there's been no new exploration going on, which we all are well aware of that. And how do you see this playing out over the next few years?
Well, I think it's almost in a irreversible decline right now for the next 5 to 10 years because the exploration is so slowed so sharply. There's very few new deposits to mind. And you get any kind of uptick in the demand, and that supply demand scenario is going to go very strong on the demand side. Is going to, of course, I think, have a big impact on the price. So, and I think the other thing in regard to that I think gold is extremely underowned in Western investment portfolios because the supplies of above ground stocks are normally available to satisfy that investment, but that demand has been severely depleted by flows to Asian investors. So I think the price dynamics could be explosive to the upside.
Yes, I think there's that potential for it to be explosive. I hope not too explosive all at once, because that's not really healthy either for the market.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. No.
And with what just happened in India and the Indian government coming out and banning and making illegal two of the most used currencies in that country, I have it on very good authority that Thailand and Vietnam, no, I'm sorry, Korea, are both in the early part of 2017 are also going to do something very similar to what India has done. Not quite that dramatic. How do you see this impacting, or do you see it having any impact on the gold and silver markets over the course of 2017? Looks like 2017's being set up to be the year of the cashless society.
Well, I'm not really an expert on that, Rory, but, the one thing that I have been looking at is, I've been looking at Abby Gilbert, who writes the Elliott Wave Trader.net, and he's been very, very accurate in forecasting the price of gold, and he thinks that gold has made a bottom here. So I think all these factors could ramp up, a demand for the metal that would sharply increase prices, I think, over the next 18 months or so.
Do you think that a cashless society will have any impact on gold and silver markets? I mean, and I'm not asking you for any expertise in this area, just your personal opinion.
Well, I think when people get nervous, this is my personal opinion, I think when people get nervous, gold's always been a store of wealth. So I think people would want to own some. It's certainly been prevalent in Europe. They've done that for centuries. North America hasn't really been impacted by any kind of currency crisis ever in at least in Canada, the United States for sure. And we haven't really looked at gold too closely in that area, but it's certainly in the rest of the world they look at it very strongly as a store of wealth.
Yes, they do, and I think that the rest of the world will have a big say in the coming year, in particular, once these other countries start moving closer to a cashless society.
Well, Switzerland had a vote on actually going back to the gold standard in their country, so that that was defeated, but that idea is there. So
it most certainly is. Mining stocks, they have enjoyed a much needed move to the upside, and Winston Gold currently has two projects on the table, and one is drilling and the other project is under development. Where does Winston Gold stand with the 43101 report? And give us a brief overview of these two projects, if you would, Murray.
For sure, Rory. The name Winston Gold Mining comes from the Winston district it's about 20 miles to the southeast of Helena, Montana. And the property came to us through our geologist, Ben Porterfield, who was looking at another type of situation in that area, and then did his homework and found out that this area in particular had a lot of work done on it between 1985 and 1993. In fact, there was somewhere in the neighborhood, I think, of around 700 drill holes that were drilled into this area, basically trying to find an open pit back in I'm going to call it the mid 80s, early 90s. And because the gold wasn't widely disseminated over that area, it wasn't amenable to an open pit operation. But the drilling, the historic drilling at least, showed there was some very high grade vein material in the area. In fact, they've identified at least 12 veins in that area that we control. That could be looked at as far as lode mining is concerned, or conventional underground mining. So what we've done, Roy, is we've raised some money. We had a private placement at 15 cents that we completed not too long ago, about a month, I think, maybe 6 weeks ago. And then we just raised another 2.3 or $2.4 million Canadian. And we've been aggressively exploring the Winston property, trying to, connect some of the dots from the historic drilling that's already been done, trying to lay out a plan where we could maybe move this to a test mining or bulk sampling phase, actually go underground and start drifting on some of these veins that have been identified. So we're in that process right now. We made one announcement as far as drill results. We'll probably have more here in the next 2 or 3 weeks as we're compiling data. And what we see so far is very interesting, and we're going to try and advance this property. The other property is the Gold Ridge property. It's located in Arizona. It's a former producing mine. The interesting thing about that property is it already has a lot of development work done on it. When I say that, I mean there's a decline right to the previously mined area. They put in a couple of underground drill stations. Basically, they mined on the 600 level, and they were set up to drill lower to see if the ore existed below where they were mining previously. There's probably a very good chance that there is something below them. We've been there and checked out the drill stations, and they're compliant as far as MSHA is concerned. So at some point, we'll probably put a diamond drill into that area and test to see if there's ore beneath the previous workings. And if that be the case, then we'd be making plans on doing some development work there as well. The other thing that we've announced is a letter of intent to acquire another mining property. This one's also located in Montana. It's called the Golden Jubilee. That had a bulk sample taken in, I think it was 2001, where they mined about 500 tons of material and roughly created 928 ounces, so extremely high grade. There was another company in there in 2014. This is the company we're trying to do the deal with. This is what the letter of intent is. They did some bulk sampling as well. In fact, they drifted on this thing for, I can't really disclose the kind of distance, but a fair distance, and they also had a good result as far as the bulk sample was concerned. The only reason that they weren't able to continue was because of the very difficult environment they were in as far as raising money was concerned. In that 2011, 2015 range, where we were a very bear market, they were trying to do it as a private company and weren't able to raise the funds. They did raise some funds and were. For the money they raised, they were very successful in what they did, but just realizing that maybe they've taken off something too big for them to develop as a private company. So we've got a letter of intent with them. We'd really like to complete that, and that would give us a third project. And this one is very far advanced as far as a mining scenario concerned, because there is some development right to the face of the ore. So we would really like to get in there and check that out further, and maybe make a decision this springtime on how we advance that as well. So we have, basically, hopefully 3 projects we can advance for it.
Well, that third one sounds really very promising. I mean, if they're pulling over 900 ounces of gold out of 500 tons of dirt and rock, that's serious.
They do. Yeah, it is serious, and of course, that was just one little part of the vein. The vein's been identified right now for around 600 feet, and we'd hope to extend that and also take it lower. I think there's a few hot spots in that vein like that kind of material, is our thinking on it, but we still have to test that and check that out. But it certainly looks promising for sure.
Well, it sounds great. I hope that works out for you. And I want to kind of shift gears here a little bit. And last December, the Fed, as you recall, when I believe to a lot of people's surprise, they raised the interest rates by the smallest of amounts. And at the time, they promised to raise interest rates 4 more times during 2016, and they quickly backed off to 2. Time is now running out, Murray. If they do manage to raise interest rates between now and year's end, will this trigger a massive change in the bond and equities markets? And if so, will the global markets be able to recover very quickly?
Well, I think it's already priced into the market, Rory. I think
Oh,
I think
okay.
I think what we're seeing is the market does expect this rate increase. I think it's probably, my thinking on this is probably 100% priced into what we're seeing right now.
Okay.
The last time they raised interest rates, the dollar dropped and gold went up. So, I think that one of the things I've been reading is Ray Dalio. I like following
Hmm.
that gentleman because I think he's a very bright man. And he thinks we've made a top and peak in bonds. And I think the equity markets. I think because Trump's new to the game, I think the equity markets will still be strong. But I also think gold might have a chance here as well.
I think gold has a real good chance. If they do in fact raise rates, I think gold has a great chance.
Yep.
And last question, then I'm going to let you get back to your afternoon. Fear and greed. I've heard it said before that gold is traded and possessed based on these emotions. And what role do these emotions play in the resources trade, and as far as people owning mining shares? And why do you hold physical gold, Mr. Nye?
Well, I've always heard that gold's kind of like an insurance policy. You might want to hold 10% of your portfolio in gold, physical gold. I like it. Like I said earlier, it's a store of wealth. It's kind of a hedge against inflation. It's like, I'm looking at it like an insurance policy. From as far as from a mining standpoint, the fear and greed thing is certainly prevalent. I think that what we've seen in the last up until this year, I think we saw a lot of fear in the junior mining sector, and that's all but almost wiped it out. And, there's very little exploration being done over that 4 or 5 years period. We've already commented on that. So that fear has really hurt the mining industry, at least the precious metals industry, over the last 5 years. And the greed side of things, of course, is important as well because that gets investment going. All companies like ourselves need that investment and to develop these properties. So we like to see a little bit of that, although we don't want to see it get too carried away because that signals the top. So we hope we're in for a good 3 or 4 or 5 years here on the upside here, and I think that would of course increase investment. And just as an aside, Roy, we put another mine into production back in 2010 called the Drum Lemon Mine up near Helena, Montana, as well, in the northwest, 20 miles northwest of the state capital. And we were able to, because of the investment that we received in that, like I'll call a bull market, we were able to create 140 jobs in that area, and
Wow.
well-paying jobs, I might add. So it was, it's important to see that. I hate to use the word greed, but it's important to have a little bit of that at least because that opens up the pocketbooks and enables these things to happen.
It certainly does. I mean, unfortunately, greed has a bad rap. I mean, I don't see it as being all bad. I mean, if you're not a little bit greedy, then you're not ever going to prosper. So, I mean,
Well,
it's like anything else. I mean, in balance, it's got to be kept in
exactly.
balance.
Yeah, exactly. And it never does. There's always an overage on. I remember Warren Buffett commenting on the stock market on the fear side. He says, when the stock market puts on a sale, no one comes, and that's certainly true. We've seen that
Yep.
throughout history. When equities get so low that nobody wants them, that's the time to buy them. So you almost have to be a contrarian, but it's nice to be in the middle there somewhere while these things are playing out.
That's where I want to be, is right in the middle. Let them fight it out on both ends, and I'll just go, okay, we'll ride this out and see where it goes.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we've been speaking with Mr. Murray R. Nye, and he is the chairman and CEO of Winston Gold Mining Corporation. and they are listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange under the symbol WGC. And here in the United States, they're listed on the OTCQB market under the symbol WGMCF. And Mr. Nye, I certainly appreciate all your time this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Roy. It's a pleasure talking to you today.
Well, we'll pick it up again in the not too distant future and check on the progress of these projects and see where we stand.
Very good. I look forward to that.